$22.6 million. That's what America loses every single year to an invader smaller than your hand. The European green crab has decimated commercial fisheries, destroyed critical habitat from Maine to Washington state, and devoured billions of native shellfish. In just 2 years, populations in Puget Sound exploded by 5,500%. Entire fishing communities have declared disasters. Critical eelgrass beds that sustain salmon and countless marine species are being obliterated. But here's the question that matters. How did a crab from the coasts of Europe trigger one of the most expensive coastal invasions in American history? And more importantly, can it be stopped? This is the story of scientists racing against time, fishermen turning predators into profit, and an emerging industry built on eating the enemy. From trap lines to restaurant kitchens, from processing plants to research labs, we're witnessing America's multi-front war against an invasion that refuses to surrender. The European green crab. How this tiny species became the most hated $22.6 million invader in America. Meet Carcinus manus, the European green crab, a name that hardly captures its legacy as one of the world's 100 worst invasive species. Despite its name, this crab isn't always green. It ranges from vibrant orange to mottled brown, even deep purple. But what truly identifies it are the 5 distinctive marginal teeth along each side of its shell, like the points of a crown. These crabs rarely exceed 4 inches across, yet their impact dwarfs their size by orders of magnitude. The green crab is a generalist predator with an insatiable appetite. Studies show a single individual can consume 40 clams in a single day. They tear through soft-shell clams, blue mussels, oysters, scallops, and juvenile Dungeness crabs with ruthless efficiency. But their destruction extends beyond predation. Green crabs are vigorous diggers, churning through sediment in search of prey, uprooting eelgrass beds that serve as nurseries for salmon, herring, rockfish, and hundreds of other species. Eelgrass isn't just habitat, it's infrastructure. These underwater meadows stabilize coastlines, filter pollutants, and sequester carbon up to 35 times more efficiently than rainforests. When green crabs destroy eelgrass, they don't just eliminate shelter for juvenile fish, they trigger cascading ecological collapse. From the rocky shores of Maine to the estuaries of California, from the marshes of Massachusetts to the inland waters of Puget Sound, the green crab has established itself as America's most economically damaging marine invader. Commercial shellfish industries have watched harvests plummet. On the East Coast, soft-shell clam landings dropped from 15 million pounds to just over 2 million pounds after green crab populations surged. In Tomales Bay, California, Manila clam harvests declined by 40% following green crab establishment. The numbers are staggering. Annual losses to commercial and recreational fisheries on the East Coast alone range from $18.6 to $22.6 million. Eelgrass restoration projects have been decimated, with damage costs mounting into the millions. And these figures don't account for the West Coast, where established populations threaten a shellfish industry worth hundreds of millions annually. But perhaps most alarming is the crab's reproductive capacity. A single female can produce up to 185,000 eggs per reproductive event, potentially twice a year. Those eggs develop into larvae that drift in ocean currents for up to 80 days, traveling hundreds of kilometers before settling. This extraordinary dispersal mechanism has allowed green crabs to colonize 5 continents, establishing invasive populations from South Africa to Australia, from South America to both coasts of North America. The invasion isn't slowing, it's accelerating. Climate change is warming waters that once served as thermal barriers, allowing green crabs to expand northward into Alaska and southward along previously unsuitable coastlines. Recent detections in southeast Alaska mark a troubling milestone. The species is moving into waters that support some of the world's most productive fisheries. This isn't just an environmental crisis, it's an economic emergency, a cultural catastrophe for indigenous communities whose traditions depend on healthy shellfish beds, and a glimpse into how quickly an ecosystem can unravel when the wrong species arrives in the wrong place. To understand how we got here, we need to travel back 2 centuries to the age of wooden sailing ships crossing the Atlantic. The European green crab is native to the coasts of the Nordic and Baltic Seas, ranging from Norway south to Mauritania in North Africa. For millions of years, it evolved in European waters alongside natural predators and competitors that kept its populations in check. There, it's simply known as the shore crab, common, unremarkable, part of the natural order. But in the early 1800s, something changed. Ships needed ballast for stability during transatlantic crossings. Captains loaded their hulls with rocks, sand, and seawater from European shores. Hidden among that ballast were green crab larvae, adults tucked into crevices, and juvenile crabs that could survive out of water for up to a week. The first documented evidence of European green crabs in North America appeared around 1817 near Cape Cod. By 1879, they'd reached the Chesapeake Bay and spread to New Jersey. In the early 1900s, the invasion pushed northward through Maine and into Canadian waters, reaching Nova Scotia and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. For decades, the invasion seemed confined to the East Coast, but in the 1980s, a second front opened. Green crabs appeared in San Francisco Bay, likely transported through the Panama Canal on vessels traveling from Atlantic to Pacific waters. By 1996, they'd reached Gray's Harbor in Washington state. 1998 brought detection in British Columbia. The West Coast invasion was underway.
But here's where the story gets even more complex. Genetic research has revealed that North American green crab populations aren't all the same. The original East Coast invasion came from southern European waters, bringing crabs adapted to moderate temperatures. But in the 1980s and 90s, a second invasion arrived in northern Nova Scotia, this time from cold-adapted populations in northern Europe. These northern crabs could survive brutal Canadian winters that killed southern origin populations. The 2 populations have now hybridized, creating what researchers call the Schwarzenegger of green crabs, a super predator combining the voraciousness of the original invaders with cold tolerance that allows expansion into previously unsuitable northern waters. These hybrid populations are spreading both north and south along the Atlantic coast, overcoming one of the few natural barriers that limited their range. On the West Coast, genetic studies tell a different story. The invasion appears to stem from a single introduction to San Francisco Bay, with remarkably similar genetic makeup from California to British Columbia. This genetic uniformity suggests extraordinary dispersal ability. Larvae drifting hundreds of kilometers on ocean currents, adult crabs hitchhiking on boats and aquaculture equipment, building new beachheads with each generation. Ships remain the primary vector. Modern ballast water carries millions of tons of organisms between ports daily, despite improved regulations. Recreational boaters unknowingly transport larvae in bait buckets and live wells. Aquaculture operations accidentally spread crabs when moving equipment and stock between locations. And now, warming ocean temperatures are opening migration corridors that were previously too cold for green crab larvae to complete development. The green crab has proven itself a master of opportunity, exploiting every pathway humans have created to connect the world's oceans. We didn't just introduce one invasive species, we've facilitated multiple invasions, created hybrid superpredators, and continue opening new routes for expansion. The question isn't whether green crabs will continue spreading. The question is how fast and what we're willing to do about it. Let's be clear about what we're losing. Eelgrass beds are among the most productive ecosystems on Earth, rivaling coral reefs and rainforests in biodiversity and ecological importance. A single acre can support tens of thousands of organisms. These underwater meadows serve as nurseries where juvenile salmon, Dungeness crab, Pacific herring, and rockfish find shelter and food during their most vulnerable life stages. Green crabs destroy eelgrass through what scientists call bioturdation, violent digging and burrowing that uproots plants and destabilizes sediment. Restoration projects that took years and cost millions have been devastated in months. In New England alone, damage estimates to eelgrass restoration exceed millions of dollars annually. The shellfish industry faces equally catastrophic losses. Green crabs don't just compete with native species, they actively hunt them. Soft-shell clams, which once supported massive commercial fisheries throughout New England, have seen population crashes directly linked to green crab predation. Blue mussels, oysters, and scallops face similar pressure. Every crab removed from a commercial harvest represents immediate economic loss, but the long-term damage runs deeper. Reduced breeding populations, disrupted age structures, and ecosystems pushed toward collapse. Native species are being displaced entirely. Green crabs outcompete rock crabs, mud crabs, and other native crustaceans for food and habitat. Their aggressive nature and rapid reproduction give them overwhelming advantages. Where green crabs establish dense populations, native biodiversity plummets. For indigenous communities throughout the Pacific Northwest and New England, the crisis extends beyond economics into cultural territory. Traditional harvesting grounds that sustained communities for thousands of years are failing. Clam beds that grandparents harvested are now barren. The Lummi Nation and Maka tribe in Washington state have declared disasters, recognizing that green crabs threaten not just livelihoods, but cultural practices and food sovereignty built over millennia. The water quality impacts cascade from there. Without eelgrass to stabilize sediments and filter nutrients, turbidity increases. Without shellfish to filter water, bivalves are nature's water treatment plants, filtering pathogens and pollutants. Coastal water quality degrades. Salt marshes erode as green crabs destabilize their edges, leading to further habitat loss.
But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. What if the invasion itself could fund the response? What if the predator could become a product? Enter the emerging green crab economy. Researchers, entrepreneurs, and fishermen are discovering that this invasive species, despite being small, possesses surprising commercial potential. First, there's bait. Green crabs make excellent bait for valuable species like tautog, black sea bass, and striped bass. While not a massive market, it provides immediate economic incentive for harvesting. More promising is the food industry. In Europe, particularly Venice, soft-shell green crabs are a culinary delicacy commanding premium prices. Venetian harvesters dedicate entire careers to molting green crabs and harvesting their roe. The meat, though requiring effort to extract, is sweet and similar in flavor to blue crab. Chefs throughout New England are experimenting with green crab stock, bisque, risotto, and whole soft shell preparations. Restaurants like the Shipwright's Daughter in Massachusetts use 60 to 100 pounds of green crabs weekly, creating stocks that serve as bases for soups, sauces, and innovative dishes. Then there's fertilizer and compost. Green crab shells are rich in chitin, calcium, nitrogen, phosphorus, and trace minerals that make them ideal for soil amendment. Organizations throughout New England and the Pacific Northwest are composting green crabs with manure and spreading the mixture on agricultural fields. The chitin is particularly valuable. It stimulates beneficial bacteria that suppress plant pathogens and pest nematodes. Commercial operations are producing branded green crab compost products. In Washington state alone, over 29,000 pounds of green crab compost was produced in 2024, more than double the previous year. Research is exploring even more sophisticated applications. Chitosan, extracted from crab shells, has applications in pharmaceuticals, water purification, textile manufacturing, and food preservation. Universities are studying whether green crab shells can provide industrial-scale chitosan production. Others are investigating green crab-derived bioplastics. There's even whiskey. A New Hampshire distillery has experimented with green crab-infused spirits, turning invasive species into craft cocktails. The question isn't whether green crabs have value, it's whether developing markets for them will help control populations or inadvertently incentivize their spread. Critics worry that creating profitable markets could lead to intentional introductions in new areas or reduced enthusiasm for complete eradication. It's a delicate balance, providing economic incentive for harvest without creating economic incentive for perpetuation. The most promising approach appears to be localized, intensive removal programs combined with value-added processing that prevents any live crabs from entering new ecosystems. Flash freezing, immediate processing, and strict biosecurity protocols ensure harvested crabs never become new invasion vectors. The invasion won't be reversed by turning crabs into compost or bisque, but if innovative uses can help fund removal programs, employ local communities, and create economic value from ecological disaster, it may provide the sustained effort needed to keep populations under control.
Fighting an invasion that reproduces at this scale requires industrial-level effort deployed with surgical precision. The primary weapon is the trap. Various designs have evolved for green crab capture, each optimized for different objectives and environments. The Fukui trap, widely used throughout Canada, features a collapsible design with funnel entrances that allow crabs to enter but make escape difficult. Recent research has improved Fukui trap efficiency by up to 81% through simple modifications, adding weighted sinkers that widen entrance funnels, incorporating mesh assists that guide crabs inward, and optimizing trap placement and soak times. Minnow traps and pyramid traps work on similar principles, using bait to lure crabs into confined spaces. Recreational trappers often use pop-up traps, small enough to fit in backpacks, deployed during low tide in marshes and estuaries where green crabs concentrate. Commercial operations deploy hundreds of traps simultaneously. In Washington state, collaborative efforts between the Department of Fish and Wildlife, tribal nations, and federal agencies have set over 30,000 traps in a single season, removing more than 300,000 crabs from coastal waters. Since January 2022, over 1 million green crabs have been captured and removed from Washington's coast alone, most from Willapa Bay, Grays Harbor, and Maca Bay. Bait selection matters. Atlantic cod, squid, and herring produce higher catch rates than other options. The bait must be fresh enough to emit attractive scent plumes, but secure enough to withstand hours in the water without disintegrating or being consumed.
Trap placement follows green crab behavior. They prefer soft-bottom intertidal zones, areas with current flow that delivers food, and structure like rocks or eelgrass where they can shelter. Successful trappers study tide patterns, water temperature, and seasonal movements. Green crabs are most active in warmer months, but can be caught year-round in southern waters. Soak time, how long traps remain in the water, requires careful calculation. Too short, and crabs don't have time to find the trap. Too long, and trapped crabs consume the bait or cannibalize each other, reducing overall catch efficiency. Research suggests checking traps every few hours produces optimal results. Night trapping appears more effective than day trapping, with higher catch rates documented during darkness when green crabs are more actively foraging. Here's where trap deployment gets strategically complex. Intensive trapping can backfire. Remember that green crabs are cannibalistic. Adults eat juveniles, naturally controlling populations. Early eradication attempts in California's Sea Drift Lagoon demonstrated this problem spectacularly. Researchers trapped aggressively, removing over 90% of the population. They celebrated their success. Then the population exploded to 3 times its original size. What happened? The traps caught mostly large adults, which left juvenile crabs without natural predators. Those juveniles matured, reproduced, and created a population boom. The lesson was clear. Complete eradication requires removing all life stages or maintaining enough adult presence to suppress juvenile survival while still reducing overall population. This discovery has transformed management strategies. Successful programs now focus on sustained, intensive removal that reduces populations without triggering compensatory rebounds. It's population management, not eradication, keeping numbers low enough to minimize ecological damage while maintaining harvest intensity that prevents recovery. Beyond trapping, some programs employ direct collection. At low tide, trained volunteers and staff search exposed areas, flipping rocks, checking tidal pools, and hand-catching crabs. It's labor-intensive but effective in shallow nursery areas where traps don't work well. Technology is advancing the effort. Monitoring networks use standardized protocols to track population trends across regions. Early detection programs train community members to identify and report green crabs in areas where they haven't been found, allowing rapid response before populations establish. Genetic monitoring helps identify source populations and track invasion pathways. Understanding which populations are reproducing and where larvae are coming from allows targeted intervention. The reality is sobering. With current technology and funding, complete eradication from established populations appears impossible. But intensive, sustained removal, combined with early detection in new areas, offers the best hope for limiting damage and preventing further spread. Success requires commitment measured in decades, not seasons. Funding must be sustained. Collaboration between agencies, tribes, commercial fishers, and communities must continue. And innovative approaches, from trap design to processing infrastructure, must keep evolving.
What happens to 1 million crabs once they're landed? In Washington state, green crabs pulled from Willapa Bay and Grays Harbor travel to processing facilities where the invasion meets industrial-scale response. First comes sorting. Workers separate crabs by size, sex, and condition. Large males, small juveniles, egg-bearing females. Each category gets different treatment based on end use. Crabs destined for culinary markets undergo initial quality checks. Those headed for processing into other products move down a different path. For fertilizer production, crabs must be euthanized before processing. Biosecurity regulations prohibit any possibility of live release. Flash freezing in industrial freezers accomplishes this while preserving the material for later processing. Dead crabs cannot establish new populations. The composting process combines green crabs with carbon-rich materials like wood chips, sawdust, or agricultural waste. The mixture requires specific ratios: enough carbon to balance the nitrogen-rich crab material, enough moisture to support microbial activity, enough air circulation to prevent anaerobic decomposition that produces foul odors. As microorganisms break down crab proteins and shells, the compost pile generates significant heat, often exceeding 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This thermal composting kills pathogens, destroys weed seeds, and accelerates decomposition.
After several weeks of active composting followed by curing, the final product is a rich, dark soil amendment packed with slow-release nutrients. Operations partnering with companies like Tidal Grow Agriscience have scaled this process considerably. In 2024, nearly 30,000 pounds of green crab compost was produced in Washington alone, more than doubling the previous year's output. The compost gets sold to farms, nurseries, and home gardeners, creating revenue that helps fund continued removal efforts.
For chitosan extraction, the process becomes more sophisticated. Shells undergo chemical treatment to remove proteins and minerals, leaving purified chitin. Further processing converts chitin to chitosan, a valuable biopolymer with applications far beyond agriculture. This compound can purify water, preserve food, manufacture biodegradable textiles, and serve pharmaceutical applications. The challenge is scaling production to industrial levels while maintaining economic viability. Some facilities are exploring protein extraction for animal feed, particularly aquaculture. Green crabs contain high-quality protein that could supplement or replace less sustainable feed ingredients like wild-caught fish meal. The infrastructure required isn't trivial. Processing facilities need cold storage, industrial grinders, composting space, quality control laboratories, and supply chain connections to end markets. They need permits, biosecurity protocols, and trained staff. Capital investment runs into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Economic viability remains uncertain. Processing costs must stay low enough that the end products can compete with conventional alternatives. Compost competes with established fertilizer brands. Chitosan competes with material from conventional crab and shrimp processing. Protein meal competes with established feed ingredients. The breakthrough may come from stacking value streams. A single facility that produces compost, extracts chitosan, processes protein meal, and supplies culinary markets can spread fixed costs across multiple revenue sources. Green crabs become a multi-product feedstock rather than single-use waste. This industrial approach transforms ecological crisis into economic opportunity, but only if sustained harvest can match processing capacity. Too many crabs with too little processing infrastructure leaves crabs rotting. Too much infrastructure with too few crabs leaves facilities idle. The balance requires coordination between harvest programs, processors, and end markets. It's the inverse of most fisheries management. Success means higher catches of a species we're trying to eliminate, processed into products that fund continued elimination efforts.
Not every green crab ends up as fertilizer. Some end up on plates. The culinary movement around green crabs started with a simple question. If they're edible in Europe, why not in America? The challenge is immediately obvious. Green crabs are small. Picking meat from shells that rarely exceed 4 inches requires patience and yields modest returns compared to blue crabs, Dungeness crabs, or lobsters. It's labor-intensive for minimal meat. But innovative chefs discovered the workaround. Don't focus on the meat, focus on the flavor. Green crab stock has become the signature preparation. The process is straightforward. Rinse whole crabs, crush them with a mallet or wooden spoon to crack shells, then simmer for hours with aromatics like onion, fennel, celery, garlic, and bay leaf. The shells release incredible flavor, sweet, briny, complex. The resulting stock rivals or exceeds traditional shellfish stocks in depth and character. This stock becomes the foundation for bisques, chowders, risottos, sauces, and seafood stews. Chef Charles Drahe at Alcove in Boston developed Furlong bisque, named in honor of pioneering green crab harvester Mike Furlong. The bisque requires only half the amount of green crab bodies compared to lobster for equivalent flavor intensity, making it economically competitive while utilizing an invasive species.
The Shipwright's Daughter restaurant uses green crab stock as a base for spicy crab oil, aioli, bouillabaisse, rice dishes, vinegars, and poached fish preparations. They go through 60 to 100 pounds of green crabs weekly, demonstrating that sufficient culinary demand can support meaningful harvest effort. Soft-shell green crabs represent the premium culinary product. Just like blue crabs, green crabs molt as they grow, briefly becoming completely soft. In this state, the entire crab becomes edible, shell and all. Venice has cultivated soft-shell green crab harvesting into an art form, with specialized harvesters called moecante dedicating careers to molting crabs at precisely the right moment. Venetian soft-shell green crabs can sell for over €100 per kilogram.
American harvesters are beginning to replicate these techniques, though molting green crabs commercially remains extremely labor-intensive. The crabs must be monitored constantly. Miss the molt by hours and the opportunity passes. The infrastructure required, holding tanks, monitoring systems, climate control, represents significant investment. For hard-shell crabs, chefs have developed creative preparations. Some deep-fry whole crabs until completely crispy. Others dredge soft-shell crabs in batter and serve them over pasta. Green crab roe, the orange reproductive tissue in females, can be incorporated into taramo salata, the Greek dip traditionally made with fish roe. The roe provides rich, complex flavor that transforms simple preparations into delicacies. Green crab meat, though small in quantity per individual, tastes sweet and delicate, comparable to blue crab. The effort required to pick meat has led some chefs to develop crab lollipops, leaving meat attached to leg sections, creating bite-sized portions that require no additional picking. Home cooks are joining the movement. Recipe guides show how to make green crab ceviche, fried rice, empanadas, and dumplings. The accessibility of the resource, green crabs can be trapped or collected by hand in many coastal areas, makes it one of the few truly sustainable seafood options available to recreational harvesters. The question hanging over culinary green crab development is whether creating demand helps or hurts. Critics worry that if green crabs become too valuable, economic incentives could lead to reduced eradication enthusiasm or even intentional spread. Supporters argue that demand creates sustained harvest pressure that benefits ecosystems while providing economic opportunities to coastal communities. The key appears to be localized markets that don't incentivize long-distance transport. A restaurant in Boston sourcing from Massachusetts trappers, a farmer's market in Washington selling crabs from Puget Sound. These create value without creating risk of further spread. National distribution or export markets might tell a different story. The culinary movement represents more than recipes. It's cultural reframing, turning an invasive pest into a local delicacy, transforming ecological liability into community asset. If Americans can learn to love eating green crabs, sustained harvest pressure becomes culturally embedded rather than dependent on government programs and grant funding. The more people who view green crabs as food, not pests, the more likely removal efforts can achieve the intensity and duration required to control populations.